Sorry. Okay. All right. So sometimes you would hear people talk about freedom and limits. Sometimes people talk about freedom and discipline. Okay. When we say freedom and limits, it means that, the condition of getting to freedom is actually limits. But discipline is more like the result of when you offer children these limits and you give them an environment with the possibility to reach self-discipline. So it's actually the same topic and just have a different emphasis. But in the elementary program, when they do training, they don't talk about freedom and limits or freedom and discipline. They talk about freedom and responsibility. Because developmentally, they're at the age of learning about, their morality, developing their moral values. Their topic is more about how do we assist the age group of elementary children reach the ability to take responsibility. But in our primary environment or toddler environment, we don't really think that children can take the responsibility because it takes a lot to be able to be responsible. Okay. So it's just explain that. Sometimes you will read articles and those are the terms that you would encounter and they have different meanings. Okay. So first of all, we're going to introduce this concept of freedom. And before we start doing that, I want to ask you all one little question. So when you hear the word limits, where do you feel it in your body? Not in your head, in your body. Okay, so feel it a little bit. I'm going to say it again. Okay, limit. Okay, and now I want you to hear another word, and when you hear it, I want you to feel it in your head. What does it feel like in your head? Okay, discipline. Okay. Okay, so it's something that I have to think about it all the time because I come from a very different culture. I grew up in Taiwan and I didn't leave Taiwan until I was 28, meaning when I, took Montessori training, that's the first time I left my country. So Taiwan is basically a Chinese kind of society because, a lot of our ancestors came from China, and Confucianism is what we practice a great deal, and we study a lot of it. When I was in elementary school, we actually memorized a lot of Confucius words. And also because of the politics and, international politics and all kinds of reasons, when I was little, I actually had to march every day like soldiers. Every morning, we have to line up in front of our classroom, and then we would walk to the court together as a whole class, and the whole school will be there, and we all line up and stand like soldiers, and you cannot you cannot move around. If you move around, the teacher will come and scold you. And so that's what we grew up with, and it was very strict. And I was also, I'm old enough. And so when I was growing up, corporal punishment was actually practiced. And it was part of our lives. Everyone got beaten up. When you go to school, you don't get, say like you have a math test and you are lower than 80%. And each 1% that you are lower than 80, you get hit one time. So God forbid if you are 60. It's 20 times. And, it's really annoying that they actually take bamboo. And you probably are not familiar with bamboo, but when you get hit by bamboo, it hurts like a MF. It really hurts. And if the teachers are really mean, during the summer, they would hit your legs. They will hit it on your thigh so that everyone can see the marks because you cannot hide it. It was really bad when I was little, corporal punishment. And nowadays you cannot do that in Taiwan because if you dare to touch the child, you get sued. And if you yell at the child, you get sued. We're worse than America right now. So it's a very different world. But that is how limits were relayed when I was little. It was all about disciplinarian. We're not talking about discipline. It's, back then, disciplinarian was the norm. That's how limits were done. But we didn't have any freedom. But all I learned was that don't make a mistake. When you make a mistake, you get punished. So it's not because I was very good at not making mistakes, but because I didn't want to get punished. And we learn things, we try to memorize things so that we don't get hit, so that you don't get shamed. And that was actually one of the worst ways to relay limits. Okay, so we want you to think about it. Think about your own feeling about freedom and limits. What is limits to you? And what does it mean to be free? Last week, I was talking to you about, I couldn't understand the gun law. I couldn't understand why people can't have gun. If you're a gun lover, I'm so sorry, I apologize, but I don't believe in the amendment. It's not because I'm an American citizen now, and it's not because I don't respect the Constitution. But I think that Constitution, that amendment is violating my human right. Because I walk on the street, I don't even know which idiot has gun in their pocket. And this is not Mae West movie. Like, are you happy to see me, or do you have a gun in your pocket? No, it's not funny, right? And so to me, I don't really know how you feel about limits. The limit in the society, the limit in life, how you feel about it will translate to your behavior when you're working with children. Some people, they were so punished, and so they are against any kind of limits. They were like, my children should live free. They should have no limits. Whatever they want, they should have it. They want to break a bowl, they should do it. They want to hit someone, they should do it. They want to run around, they should do it. They want to jump onto the table, they should do it. God forbid. And if they fall from the table and hit their head, then they say, why did you let my child get hurt? And I'm like, wait a minute. At your house, you actually let them jump around onto the table like a monkey, and you sing the song to them. I don't get it. right? So we have to examine this a lot. And this is one of the topics I talk to parents a lot. When there are new parents to my school, I talk about this the first thing. How do you feel about limit? Because I have a lot of limits in my classroom. I don't have arbitrary rules, but I have limits. So I would start explaining to them what are the limits. Okay, so think about it, and I think it's a great question to contemplate, and also something you need to process together with the family you work with, and also with your school community. The school needs to have a very clear thinking and policy about freedom and limits. Okay, so this is what Dr. Maria Montessori said in Education and Peace. She said, the child is also capable of developing and giving us tangible proof of the possibility of a better humanity. He has shown us the true process of construction of the normal human being. We have seen children totally change as they acquire a love for things and their sense of order. Discipline and self-control develops within them as a manifestation of their total freedom. We have seen them labor steadily, drawing on their own energies and developing them as they work. This quote is super dense, but it says a lot about the path towards freedom for children is actually work, is actually sense of order, sense of self-discipline, and sense of self-control. And the only way they can gain self-control is through using their body so that their brain can control their hands, can control their body to do what the brain wants the body to do. And that is self-discipline. And that is the development of will. Okay. So it is really that we have to have a very different imagination about limits. So imagine this, there is a very big river. And in the river, of course, there is water, right? And you can imagine that this water is the children's developmental energy, which we can say hormone, okay? Or their, or their absorbent mind, or their human tendencies, or it could be their sensitive periods, okay? So that water, which is the developmental energy, it keeps running towards the ocean. Okay, that is the goal, which is the development. However, when you look at the river, what contains the water in there? It's the river banks. So without the river banks, we're in trouble. What happens when the water overflows? Then we have flood. When the flood is so severe, it floods the neighboring area and it might sabotage people's lives. It might kill people. Water is tremendous. It has a lot of power. So imagine a child's developmental energy is running in this course without us providing limit, which is the riverbank. It's just going to run everywhere. It doesn't even have a course to run. We need to help children to channel their energy. So the limits that we provide, first of all, the function is to channel their developmental energy. So the limits is not there as an obstacle. Okay, and the second of all, whatever limits we provide, if we implemented it carefully, it becomes an aid for development rather than forcing children to learn something. Okay, so we're going to portray this concept in a very short amount of time. Okay, so we know that, human beings, we depend on each other. And so in order to grow, in order to live, in order to thrive and develop our potentiality, we have to live within a human society. And so in this human society, in order to satisfy their own needs, there are rules in the society that we all have to follow. And in the children's society, in a young child society, there aren't many laws that they need to follow. However, there are some hard rules. And I have 3. Okay. First hard rule is that the child may not hurt themselves, either physically or verbally. They may not hurt themselves physically or verbally. And they may not hurt other children physically or verbally. And the third hard rule is that they may not harm the materials that is beneficial for their development. When we say they may not damage the material, it means that they may not damage the purpose of the materials that would benefit them, that the children will benefit from their own development. So, inevitably, because their body movement control are not ready, and they might accidentally drop something, and they might damage the material. That is not what we're talking about. That is not a limit. They would definitely break a bowl, and they might drop the cube from the pink tower and chip it. I'm not going to blame the children for doing that, okay, unless they throw it at people on purpose. I have a problem with that. But if it's because control of movement and they drop it, it's not what we have concern about. It is that when they're exploring the material, say, they use the pink tower as a train. They start building train and they start playing out their fantasy. That is not the purpose of the material. We're not saying that it is wrong to place things out. Children have the ability to imagine. But when I see that behavior, I would not let it continue, because the pink tower is a grading material, and it is about discriminating the sizes. What I would do is go over and say, wow, you already know how to grade the pink tower. And I also see that you like to tell stories. How about I help you to put away the pink tower? Let's go talk about your story. So I want it to become a conversation, or I want it to become a spoken language activity, rather than having them playing it out with that piece of material. So I'm not saying that playing out the imagination is wrong. I'm saying that, well, the pink tower is not built for that purpose. So let's not use it for that. And I wouldn't even tell the child, you don't use the pink tower for this. I wouldn't even say that. I would just say what they really like to do. And I said, oh, it appears to me that you want to talk. You probably want to draw your story. I have crayons, or I have watercolor. Which one would you like to use? And after you draw, if you like to tell me the story, I can help you to write it down. So we want the children to do something that is purposeful for their development, and everything has a purpose. Okay, so that is the third heart rule we're talking about. And I want to emphasize that a great deal because we encounter that kind of issue a lot, right? Should I ask the child to put it away or not? How do I tell the child to put it away? Okay, so that's one of the ways that I would do that. But because we live in a society, like I said, inevitably, when the children are developing, when they are not yet there, when they don't have the control of movement, when they don't have the words to verbally express themselves, they would actually sometimes violate other people's freedom. It's not because they want to violate other people's freedom. It's because developmentally, they're not there yet, which is why our environment, we need to implement that. We need to implement those limits. So how do we set the limit? The way I set the limit, there are several ways, okay? But first of all, let me give you the definition of the freedom and the discipline. So freedom can be defined, if you look it up in the dictionary, as the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. Okay? So freedom can be defined as the power of or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. And discipline can be defined as the practice of training people to obey rules or a code of behavior using punishment to correct disobedience. And please, we don't do that, but that's a definition when you look up the words in the dictionaries. Okay, so freedom, the part is really easy. But in our environment, we set up a prepared environment with everything carefully researched, carefully designed. So everything has a purpose. And we set it up in this environment. So what is the limit of the children's development? Very easy. The prepared environment. And what is in the prepared environment is the essence of our cultures. Practical life is the essence of culture, and sensorial is also essence of the culture, right? Every culture has shapes, colors, sizes, smell, taste, you name it. Every culture has it, even though it appears to be different. But when you break it down, when you use the concept of materialized abstraction, it's all the same. It's just that the same color, this color here, that's white, right? In English, it's called white. In Chinese, it's called 白色. In Taiwanese, it's called 北蟹. I don't know other languages, but if you do, you can share with us. It's the same concept, just named differently. But I don't even have to, if I go to a foreign country, I don't, I want to buy something and I want it white. If I don't know their words, I can just show them I want this color. Then they would understand it because it is universal. Math is universal, okay? However, language is not. Language is very local, very cultural. Okay, but still, every language has the same quality. There's spoken language, there is symbols, which is written language, and we have reading and writing. Okay, so all of that is actually our limit within our prepared environment. So how do you set the limit? you have to look at the prepared environment. How do we choose the materials? They have to be child size. They have to be, age appropriate. They have to be culturally appropriate. They have to be, color coded if they're in particular life area. Or like in sensorial area, they have to be, whenever possible, mathematically correct. Okay, and they always have to be housed together as a set. So, do you hear where the limit is? This limit is for adults. This is the limit. When we follow those limits, we set up an environment for the children, then they have freedom to choose. They have freedom to communicate. Then they have freedom to work. They have freedom to move around. So I would say in terms of limits is what adults need to be aware of and what we need to do. And when you set it up correctly, children can enjoy their freedom within our limits. And your presentation is a kind of limit. What I meant is not that children will do exactly what you do. They're not going to follow what you do, but because your presentation set a goal and set an example for the children, so it becomes their goal of development. They want to be like us, but they don't want to be us. Okay, so that presentation itself is a limit. But it is a limit to help them to reach freedom, because that is the beginning point of their exploration. Once you give the presentation, it means that this is how we explore this kind of material. Now it's all yours. Go ahead and explore. And we're looking at if they violate the purpose of the material, which children would know, but only we know. That is what we study. So we would turn around and think about how we can represent or maybe intervene and to steer the direction, helping the child to explore the material for their own benefit, rather than sabotaging their own development. Okay, so children are not doing anything wrong when they explore the material in a way that is damaging the purpose. It is that we know that the limit of our material is developed for a certain purpose. And that part of it is scientific purpose. And we want to aid the children to realize their potentiality. So it appears to be also that the materials that we provide is also a limit, but it is with purpose to help children to get there. Okay, so what I'm saying is that we are using the external order. We're using the external limit to help children to develop their internal limit. So once they know a presentation, once they explore the material, isn't it that they're free to choose any material that they know how to do? And when they develop their movement and their language, then they're free to use this ability to either serve other people or to use this ability to learn mathematics or use that ability to learn language. So developing their movement and language is actually a vehicle towards freedom. And in order to reach there, we must provide purposeful material to the children's hands. Okay, so the materials are not used to limit the children, but the materials are there to aid their development so that they can reach their freedom. The more ability they have, the more freedom they will enjoy. Right? When you go to Japan, if you don't speak Japanese, you will feel trapped. I tried it before because I don't speak Japanese. And the first time I went to Tokyo, I said, "Excuse me, can I ask you something?" And they'd run away. Or they try to avoid you if they can. So I learned, "Gomenasai." And then they would look at me. Then I say, "Oh, excuse me, can you tell me?" And Japanese are really cute. Once they're engaged with you, they would not run away, even though it's very hard. And I loved it for them. So anyways, what I'm saying is that even as adults, when you don't have the ability, when you don't have all of that in order to communicate with other people or to express yourself, you feel trapped. You don't have freedom. You might have a lot of money, but you don't have freedom. And that's what children have. They have a lot of brain cells. They have a lot of neuron that in order to develop. However, if you don't give them the tangibles, if you don't give them an environment that is purposeful, they won't reach freedom. So the environment itself is a freedom, actually. And our attitude is a freedom. So I want to give you another quote. Dr. Maria Montessori this is a book only published by Kalakshetra Press, and it's an Indian press. It's called Creative Development in the Child, Volume 2. It's said in this book, "We admire the freedom in nature, yet in nature everything is tied by laws. These protective laws form the base of discipline, which renders that freedom possible. The stars and planets are free in the space of the universe, yet they obey laws. The stars and planets have their routes to follow. We must say among the living beings, fish are the most free, and yet they cannot get out of water. So each being, animate or inanimate, is free within its ties, within those limits that nature has tied it up with. Freedom is thus to obey the laws to perfection, with attention to the minutest detail." So I want to end here today because, there's so much to think about. But I hope that this gives you enough to think about over the weekend. And at the very beginning of next week, we'll finish this topic and we're going to get into language. But, freedom is such a big topic in the Montessori, in the Montessori paradigm. However, I feel that we don't talk enough about limits. Freedom, it shouldn't be a concept. To me, freedom is a process. In order to be free, you must understand the laws. And for children to understand the laws, you cannot make it arbitrary. You cannot make it that, "Oh, teacher, can I go to the bathroom? Teacher, is this correct? Teacher, am I finished with this work?" Then there's no freedom, right? So if we don't understand the concept of prepared environment, and if we don't practice our presentations, if we don't observe, we become the hindrance to children's freedom, because you become the rule, and human cannot be the rule. because the rules are in your head. I don't even know what they are, let alone the children. Children cannot be looking at you and know that, oh, don't mess with this woman. Ooh, she is gonna tell me no. They don't know that, right? So anyways, we're gonna stop here, and hopefully next week when we come back to this topic, you have more understanding about your own feeling towards limits. Okay, and then we'll go from there. And the first group, you can stay and start talking to me. And I know other groups, and probably not everyone can make it to the small group with me today. We'll just progress as we go along. Okay, thank you. Have a nice weekend. Don't forget to go out to play.